In the summer of 394 AD, the Roman Empire, divided and fragile, stood at an equilibrium. It was, in name, one empire, but in truth, it was split into two competing visions of Rome's future. The eastern half was ruled by Theodosius I, the last man who would ever command the entire Roman Empire alone. A Spaniard by birth, a soldier by training, and a devout Nicene Christian by conviction, Theodosius ruled from Constantinople and had spent much of his reign fighting Gothic wars, suppressing revolts, and enforcing Christian orthodoxy. The western half, however, was in rebellion. After the mysterious death of Valentinian II in 392 AD, control in the west fell into the hands of Arbogast, a Frankish general and magister militum. Barred by custom from assuming the title of emperor himself, Arbogast elevated a respected civil servant, Eugenius, to the rank of emperor. Theodosius saw it differently. Eugenius was a usurper, Arbogast was a traitor, and the unity of the empire could not tolerate two emperors. War was inevitable. In the spring of 394, Theodosius assembled one of the largest armies of his reign. 35,000 troops from across his eastern empire. It was a force that reflected the changing face of Rome. Eastern Roman legions and auxilia, Armenian and Iberian contingents, a large force of Gothic federati, federated warriors settled within the empire, and numerous Eastern and Gothic cavalry. Eugenius and Arbogast, meanwhile, gathered their forces in northern Italy. Their force was of equal strength in numbers. They included Western Roman legions, Frankish troops loyal to Arbogast, veteran soldiers from Gaul and Italy, and a sizable force of Roman and auxiliary cavalry. Arbogast was no mere court general. He was an experienced and ruthless commander who chose his ground with care. Rather than meet Theodosius on open plains, he took up a defensive position near the Frigidus River, modern Vipava in Slovenia, at the eastern approaches to the Julian Alps. The Frigidus flowed through steep, broken terrain hemmed in by hills and rocky slopes. Arbogast anchored his army across the valley, with high ground protecting his flanks. The road from the Balkans into Italy ran straight through this choke point. It was a narrow valley that forced Theodosius into a head-on fight. If Theodosius failed here, the empire would remain divided. On September 5th, the two armies faced each other. Christian writers later claimed Theodosius fasted and prayed the night before battle, seeking divine aid. Whether or not this is literal truth, there is no doubt that morale and ideology weighed heavily on both sides. Each army believed itself to be fighting for the soul of Rome. At dawn, the Eastern Army's vanguard advanced to give battle. This was the entire Gothic force led by their chieftain Alaric. Theodosius' decision to commit all of his Gothic contingent in the initial battle was both a brutal and controversial course of action. Theories suggest that he wanted to use his large Gothic force to break down the Western Roman defenses, and in the process it would cripple Alaric and the Goths' army, thus making them less of a threat if future disputes were to arise. As both the Eastern Empire and the Goths were embroiled in many conflicts over the years, Theodosius, a cunning strategist, saw this opportunist moment to act in his empire's best interest. Theodosius, in essence, was killing two birds with one stone. Wave after wave of Goths surged forward, charging fortified western positions. Arbogast's disciplined troops stood firm. Missiles rained down from higher ground. The Goths responded with barrages of javelins and spears hurled viciously at the front lines of the western troops. The western legions in return unloaded thousands of plumbata darts deep into the ranks of the barbarians. The fighting devolved into savage hand-to-hand combat. Neither force gained any obvious advantage, and the brutal fighting came to a standstill with men dropping by the dozens. The fighting raged on for hours. The Goths, to their credit, fought vigorously, especially against a superior fortified foe. They pushed and pushed but could not get through the well-defended Western troops. Losses began to stack on both sides, but noticeably more so for the Goths, who, without any reinforcements from their commander, could not pierce through the enemy defenses. With no clear advantage having been gained through the Gothic assault, and without a foreseeable route to victory, Gothic commander Alaric decided to withdraw what was left of his men back to camp, and the fighting ceased for the day. Thousands lay dead from the initial clash. Alaric and his men were disgruntled by the fact that Theodosius had allowed them to fight alone without providing reinforcements. Tensions were high in the Eastern Roman camp that evening. The losses in the initial clash were appalling. Modern historians agree that Theodosius suffered extremely heavy losses on the first day of battle, primarily, if not all his losses being entirely Gothic Federate troops. Arbogast had suffered losses as well, but his defensive line held. That evening, confidence filled the Western camp. Sacrifices were reportedly made, and hopes rose that the rebellion would end in victory. The Eastern army had failed to break through, and the cost had been staggering. Some of the Eastern commanders, including Stilicho, urged retreat. Yet Theodosius refused. He still had all of his Eastern legions intact and resolved to continue the fight. To secure victory, Arbogast sent a flanking cavalry contingent concealed in the night to outflank Theodosius's camped army. According to Christian sources, notably Rufinus, Theodosius spent the night in prayer. He then reportedly received a divine vision promising victory, reinforcing later Christian interpretations of the battle. For whatever strange reason, Arbogast's flanking auxiliary cavalry had instead opted to bargain with the Eastern Emperor in return for deserting the Western Emperor's cause. Why they did this is pure speculation. Possibly they got greedy, and given the current desperate situation of the Eastern army, they saw a ripe opportunity to get paid handsomely. Theodosius agreed, and by the next morning he was full of confidence. He arrayed his army up for battle. The Western army, confident with their now superior numbers, marched out of their fortified camp and met the Eastern legions on the battlefield. The opposing legions at the forefront crashed into one another's ranks. A clash of wooden shields and metal rang out across the field. The battle had begun much as the first day had ended. Hard fighting, each side matching blow for blow. A miraculous stroke of luck for Theodosius's force, or perhaps an answer to his prayers, a violent Bora wind, a fierce and sudden downslope gale common in the region, swept through the Frigidus valley. According to multiple sources, including Rufinus, the heavy winds blew directly into the faces of Arbogast's and Eugenius's troops, blinding them with dust and debris. To Christian historians, this was divine intervention, God himself turning the air into a weapon. Pagan writers were more cautious but did not deny the extraordinary conditions. Whatever its cause, the effect was decisive. With momentum now in their favor, Theodosius's troops pressed forward. The Eastern legions in good morale in light of this fruitful omen steadily but carefully edged onwards. The Western legions, blinded by the continuous heavy winds blowing dust and debris into their eyes and face, began to backtrack towards their camp. Slowly they gave ground, and the tide of the battle shifted entirely. Theodosius' troops pressed forward. Arbogast's carefully arranged defense collapsed under the combined pressure of renewed assault and environmental chaos. What started out as an orderly withdrawal very soon evolved into a chaotic mass of Western Roman troops completely losing all cohesion. Their line broke entirely. The Western Roman puppeteer Emperor Eugenius was captured alive. He was brought before the victorious soldiers and executed shortly thereafter, his head reportedly displayed as proof that the rebellion had ended. Arbogast, the true instigator of this rebellion, had fled into the mountains. For several days he evaded capture, but knowing his cause was lost, he took his own life. The battle and the civil war was over. Theodosius had won, but the victory came at an immense cost. Politically, Theodosius was now master of the Roman world, but this was short-lived, and the continued decline of the Roman Empire was inevitable.